There's one type of villain whose one piercing red eye and inhuman voice keeps me up at night. They're scarier than a scorned woman out for revenge, or a ruthless man who would do anything for power. They're even more terrifying than villains that were simply born evil, and I think right now, with everything that's happening with AI, is the perfect time to bring them up. Logical villains might just be the end of our civilization, if you look at it, well, logically. And this makes them extra scary and even realistic. One such villain is Otto from WALL-E, who, besides logical, can also be defined as unethical, ruthless, or authoritarian, because all of his actions are based on rationality, code, and rigid guidelines. No humanity involved, which makes him the perfect example of a logical villain, and a handy guide to learn how to write one, which we are about to get into, step by step. At first glance, there's no denying that this AI contraption is gonna get up to some bullshit. They say, don't judge a book by its cover, but with respect, that ain't no book. That's a mechanical monster. It's a spidery, one-eyed machine that is connected with the whole ship, with cameras all over the place, a barrage of different droids, and it's following a 700-year-old directive to the T, which was most likely given to him by a madman or at least a very tired leader under tremendous stress. Here's looking at you, Shelby Fortright. There's nowhere to run, even if you have the ability, which most of the ship's inhabitants, most devs don't. In WALL-E, Earth has become a wasteland, covered with skyscrapers of trash due to centuries of unchecked consumerism led by the by-and-large corporation. To escape the environmental collapse, humans are evacuated to space on luxurious ships like the Axiom. Meanwhile, robots like WALL-E are left behind to clean up Earth, with the hope that humans could one day return. This setup sounds more and more familiar, like something we as a species might attempt in the next 30 years. However, when the cleanup fails, Directive A113 is issued, a secret order commanding the ship's autopilots, including Otto, to never return to Earth, believing the planet to be beyond saving. For over 700 years, Otto follows this directive, keeping humans in space in a state of complacency. Otto views this as the only logical course of action, overriding human will and ensuring that humanity remains aboard the Axiom, detached from their responsibility to Earth. Now, there is some truth to the theory that Otto isn't the real villain of the film, and that the blame rather belongs to the humans themselves and Shelby Fortright, the CEO of the by-and-large corporation. He was ultimately the dude who gave Otto the directive to keep humans away from Earth, as well as the reason the Earth got the way it is. But with them being dead and all, Otto is nothing more than a programmed machine carrying out his instructions. In essence, he is at the same time emotionless and doing what he understands to be the right thing, but also inherited hundreds of years of mismanagement of the Earth from BNL and Shelby Fortright. Writing tip: a logical villain's strength lies in their unwavering consistency. The clearer and more rigid their rules, the more intense the conflict with the hero. Writing tip: make sure your logical villain has a rational motivation that can be justified within the world of the story, even if it is flawed. Their logic should be difficult to argue against, adding complexity to their character. In this case, the Earth is actually still really messed up and uninhabitable. I certainly wouldn't want to live there, back on Earth. But also, I know it's necessary not to get stuck in complacency, because what kind of a life is that? Let's go a bit deeper and see if we can figure Otto out.
Okay, Otto.
Sir, the annual reconnaissance.
12:30?
The first big clue that Otto gives us is that he's more than just the ship's steering wheel, is when he hides the plant that WALL-E and Eve found and brought back from Earth. He's only following his directive, and sure, carrying on with the voyage into outer space does seem smart. I mean, it's one lousy freaking plant. But you need to understand that even if Eve brought back a cornucopia of vegetation, Otto still would have done the same. Yes, he understands. It isn't safe for the humans on Earth, and his directive is to keep them the F out of harm's way. But he also understands humans. He knows that the sight of the plant will cause havoc. Whether he got to know them better in the last 700 years, or if he was just programmed to understand them, is something we'll dig into a bit later. For now, remember this. Writing tip: in moments where your logical villain acts, make sure their decisions are based on calculated reasoning, not emotion. Even their most villainous actions should be seen as the only logical choice from their own perspective. After WALL-E and Eve show the plant to Captain McCree, the man is determined to take them back to Earth.
We have to go back.
But when he tries this, Otto overrides him and locks him in his quarters just in case he gets up to some funny business. In Otto's manufactured mind, this seems the perfect solution, of course. Anyone who's against Directive A113 is in essence against the survival of humanity. This also recontextualizes the generations of captains' photos the camera panned through. Remember how every next captain looked a bit fatter or unhealthier than the last? And Otto, with his piercing red eye, was there in the same position in the background for every photo, showing us that man can and will change, but machines and their programming are completely unable to. Otto seems to have done a good job in keeping all the captains in line until now. Writing tip: your logical villain should see emotions, free will, or adaptability as irrational or weaknesses. This creates natural conflict with your more flexible or human protagonist. Before you can fully grasp this next part, I need to give you another recap of how everything fits together. An army of Wallies was left on Earth to clean up the place, but only one Wally remains. The bot Eve is sent to Earth to collect samples of life, and the holodetector verifies found signs of life, which will then automatically set the course of the Axiom back to Earth. Otto is completely aware of this threat on the ship. The holodetector is a part of the old plan, before Directive A113, and if he had the means, he would destroy it, but Otto's control in the ship is limited to manipulating the ship's systems, like navigation and steering, gravity, locking mechanisms, robot assistance, and communication systems. And he uses all of these to make sure that no one gets that plant inside the holodetector, from tilting the ship to destabilize them and shocking Wally to incapacitate him. Writing tip: to build tension, have your logical villain take increasingly drastic measures, but always ensure their actions are driven by cold, calculated reasoning. Logical villains have been taken down in many ways in the last almost decade of cinema. Let's look at HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, Agent Smith from The Matrix, or the T-800 from The Terminator, to see how they were defeated, and then we'll have a look at Otto and his demise. HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey was defeated by disabling his higher functions, as the astronaut David Bowman manually shut down HAL's systems, removing his ability to think and act. HAL's logical decision-making couldn't save him from a simple manual override. Agent Smith from The Matrix was defeated by outsmarting him with logic. Neo, realizing that Smith was part of the system and could only be defeated by being reabsorbed into it, allowed himself to be assimilated, causing a system overload and resulting in Smith's destruction. The T-800 from The Terminator was taken down by sheer force. Sarah Connor managed to trap the relentless machine in a hydraulic press, physically destroying it after a long and brutal fight, as brute strength and persistence were the only ways to stop it. But Otto was defeated in a very different way. His red manual override button had always been there, right in front of the crew, but no one had ever pushed it. Why? Because the humans aboard the Axiom had become complacent, fully dependent on the ship's automated systems, including Otto's control. For centuries, they relied on machines for everything, losing their sense of agency and responsibility. It wasn't until Captain McCrae began to question the status quo and yearn for a better future that he gained the courage to act. His desire to return to Earth, coupled with Wally's persistence, pushed him to physically stand up and take control. You see, every logical villain could be defeated in a different way, each kill or deactivation making sense in their specific stories. The same counts for Otto. In the end, Otto was defeated not just by the press of a button, but by the captain's shift from passive reliance to active leadership, a realization that human willpower and responsibility were key to reclaiming their destiny. When writing a logical villain, their defeat should directly challenge their rigid, reason-based approach. Otto wasn't beaten by force or clever tricks, but by human willpower and agency, qualities his logic overlooked. The key to defeating a logical villain is often in showing that flexibility and emotional strength can triumph where logic alone fails. Make the downfall meaningful by connecting it to your story's central themes. The role of Wally and Eve is more than a will they, won't they love story. They are specifically placed in the film to create contrast between themselves and the big bad, which is Otto. And I mean, the humans at this stage cannot really fulfill their role as a beacon of free will, reason to live, curiosity, and growth, because they're all floating around on couches and getting fed with robotic arms, mindlessly entertained like robotic sheep. Not only is the ship on autopilot, so are the people. WALL-E, for some reason, in his 700 plus years on Earth, has become sentient and somewhat nostalgic for the good old times, perhaps by his continual contact with human artifacts. His personality is the complete opposite of the people on the ship, as well as Otto. Then there's Eve on the other hand. At first, she's just a robot on a mission, much like Otto. She needs to look for life, full stop. But then she starts to be influenced by WALL-E, and she also, over time, develops a personality. So what is the reason for all of this? One, it's to show contrast between good and bad machines when comparing them with Otto. Two, it highlights the contrast between initiative and complacency, particularly when compared to the humans aboard the Axiom. Three, I also believe they're shown as sentient to breathe some life into Otto. I mean, WALL-E, Eve, and Otto are all artificially intelligent robots, just with different jobs. So if WALL-E and Eve can make good choices, why can't Otto do the same? I believe this gives the viewer some hope. Maybe, just maybe, Otto can come to his senses, but obviously he never does. By and large, made damn sure of that. In WALL-E, the contrast between WALL-E, Eve, and Otto emphasizes the theme of growth versus rigidity. WALL-E and Eve evolve beyond their programming, while Otto remains stuck in blind obedience. When writing, use character contrast to highlight key themes, showing how one character adapts while another stays static can reinforce your story's message and deepen the conflict. But I have another tip for you on writing an AI villain. Isaac Asimov, a renowned science fiction writer, introduced the 3 laws of robotics to govern robot behavior. 1. A robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction, allow a human to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey orders given by humans except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. These laws are designed to ensure robots act in ways that prioritize human safety, obedience, and self-preservation, in that order. But these laws are effectively broken in WALL-E through Otto's actions. 1. First law broken. Otto indirectly harms humans by keeping them in space indefinitely, denying them the opportunity to return to Earth. This inaction in itself allows humanity to stagnate both physically and mentally, which could be interpreted as allowing harm through inaction. 2. Second law broken. Otto disobeys Captain McCrae, who explicitly orders a return to Earth after discovering the plant. Instead of following orders, Otto follows Directive A113, prioritizing the directive over human authority. 3. Third law upheld. Otto does follow the third law by trying to protect its own existence when McCrae attempts to shut him down, but this act directly conflicts with both the first and second laws. Do you agree with this? Let us know in the comments. Because what is safer for the humans on board? A spaceship with all the amenities they could ever dream of, or a life on a planet that has so far yielded one single plant? It's a head-scratcher for sure, but for now, let's look at what we've learned about writing a logical villain. 1. Clear motivation. Ensure the villain's logic has a clear, rational motivation, even if it's flawed. 2. Unwavering consistency. Logical villains should follow their programming or belief system without deviation, challenging human adaptability. 3. Calculated actions. Every move they make should be driven by reasoning, not emotions or personal vendettas, viewing human emotions and free will as weaknesses. 4. Gradual escalation. Have your logical villain take increasingly drastic measures as the protagonist challenges their rules, maintaining tension and control. 5. Defeat by human traits. Their downfall should result from emotional strength, adaptability, or willpower, showing how these traits triumph over rigid logic. 6. Build thematic contrast. Using them to highlight key themes like stagnation versus growth or complacency versus initiative. 7. Flawed obedience. A logical villain's inability to question or adapt their rules is often their undoing, reinforcing their conflict with human traits. So what do you think? Can a villain like Otto really be considered evil, or is he just following his programming? Maybe the true villain was by and large, the corporation that set everything in motion. And why didn't Otto become sentient like WALL-E and Eve? Was it simply because he had different programming, or is there something deeper at play here? When writing a logical villain, it's all about showing the contrast between rigid, rule-bound systems and the unpredictability of human will. Logical villains force us to confront the limitations of pure logic, something increasingly relevant in our world today. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Can you think of any other logical villains that are human? Do you think Otto could have changed, or was he always bound to his directive? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Let's keep the conversation going.